community and my sister for being here today. I appreciate it very much. I've had the privilege to represent District 7 and then after redistricting District 3. Essentially Southern Arizona, the borderlands, going up to Somerton, San Luis, the South County of Yuma, Nogales, Ambos Nogales, and the whole stretch coming from Sonoita all the way up to Macacuri and Tubac, and the southern part, Campbell this way of Tucson. And now a big chunk of Maricopa, essentially the city of Avondale that I represent, which teaches you a lesson, those of us from Southern Arizona. It's taught me to be a little bit more bipartisan. U of A, Wildcat, graduated. You have to temper some of your comments when you're in Maricopa in terms of how you feel about the other university. And so it is my very weak effort at bipartisanship, and I'm trying to control it as best I can and not say anything that is going to cause me problems. Let me talk a little bit about, so the general conversation today is about District 3. But I want to weave into this conversation what I think is very, very important and put that in the context of local, national, state, and indeed international public policy, economic, and social challenges that we face within the entire context. Because just to talk about the district in a silo doesn't deal with the influences that are happening all around us. Quick snapshot, quick profile of this district. It is a young district, about 750,000 people. Medium income, about 40,000. Underneath that income, though, is some figures that we need to be very concerned about. 20% of the people in the state, and in particular in this district, live in poverty. 40% of all female head of households live in poverty, below the poverty line. And 28% of children live in poverty. And the median age for this district is 31 years. 44% of that population is under 25. It is a young district with its future ahead of it, with its possibilities ahead of it. And then you lay on top of that 10.2 unemployment rate, highest in the state among the Congressional districts, and one of the top highest of the 25 districts in this country. Nothing to be proud of, a reality. And when you factor in youth, the youth of this district, and you factor in employment opportunities, that's why the context has to be much fuller than just talking about single things. 73% of the population is of color. And I mention all these facts because I think that's the context about building a future. That it's going to require for decision makers at all levels to look at this accommodation to this demographic reality that's in front of us. So let me touch some categories that I work on, and then hopefully enough time for Q&A. The general theme that we work our public policy in our offices is around the theme of investment. That in order for us to deal with the challenges that we have in the district and to help families deal with their challenges, that there has to be an investment, which begs the question about what the role of government is in this country of ours. And which begs the question about what is indeed the role of government. And you hear so much about government is the evil empire that government can do, that you just step out of the way and let free will, free market deal with the public policies, economic development, growth, and the social well-being of the people in this country. And I am not for an intrusive, looking over your shoulder, oppressive government. I think that's the wrong way to go. And it is something that is abhorrent to the American people in general. But there is a role for government in the investment strategies for the American people. There's a role for government as a mechanism for change, and there's a role for government in setting the priorities for the American people. It is not to supplant what Americans can do for yourself. It is to supplement the development of the American people. It is to add that layer of support, of resources, attention, of laws to protect, grow, and nurture the American people. That's the role of government. And we've mixed up that very fundamental role with a model that says everything government does, it shouldn't do. And I would suggest that there has to be an understanding, a much deeper understanding about the role of government in this country. Let's begin with the issue of education. State Auditor General, 15-year study, since 2001, found that Arizona has the second worst in the nation in classroom spending, period. And that, our national average per pupil expenditure in Arizona is about $7,600. The national average is about $11,000. And so that, to me, right now is one of the key investment strategies that this state, my district, and the nation can undertake in order to accommodate and prepare for the future. I told you that's a young district. I told you it's a district of color. And as those schools get filled, and as those kids come in with the needs and for opportunity, government has a role. And the role is not to starve our schools. The role is, back to the word nurture, and make sure that our schools are functioning. Mira, yo cuando comencé la escuela netas inglés, I was prepared. I was prepared. My mama taught us our ABCs, our colors. We could write cursive, our names. We were ready. Different language, but we were ready. The point I'm making is that the greatest integrative institution in this country has been our public schools. From many, there is one. Well, values, understanding of history, interaction with one another happens in this wonderful, beautiful laboratory of our public schools. And without that laboratory as the yeast to keep our democratic system working the way it should, we're all going to be in trouble. And it won't just be about achievement. It'll be about social dysfunction and marginalized people that feel that there is no way out for them. And I think we need to avoid that for the good of the nation and for the good of our economic well-being. I'm a big proponent of community colleges. I believe that their accessibility and affordability is the key for career development, for transition into four-year institutions, and for coming back. As the job market has changed, and the demands upon the American workers has changed dramatically, so is the need to retool, retrain, shift careers, and community colleges can respond faster than any other educational institution to those changing demands. We passed the Elementary and Secondary School Act in Congress, finally, where flexibility was extended to states, more discretion was extended to state, and we got off our myopic hang-up that we had to test our way into the future. That, yes, there's going to be accountability, but it's not going to be accountability that's oppressive. It's going to be an accountability that asks, this is a tool to make us be able to teach better and for kids to learn better. And so testing is important. It's accountability to the public, but it's a tool. It's not a club, it's a tool. And for too long, with No Child Left Behind, it became a club. It became a punitive reaction to our schools. And so, Proposition 123, I believe it is a short-term infusion of necessary resources into our public school, particularly to the classroom teachers. But there's a long-term trend here that I outlined in terms of this state's commitment to education. And that trend has to start to be reversed. Because like I said, the economic and social implications for Arizona are dangerous, and they're going to stunt whatever economic development that we are planning for in the future. So, yeah, you need to provide a tourniquet to the bleeding. And I think 123 stops the bleeding, but it does not cure the patient. And the legislature also extended vouchers for private, for-profit schools and for church-sponsored education schools, and that's been done. I'm not entirely supportive of that decision. In fact, I'm not supportive of it at all. But if we're going to do something like this with taxpayer money, then all I ask that people consider, and decision makers at the state level consider, the fairness question here. And the fairness question is about transparency. The fairness question is about financial disclosure. And the fairness question is about requirements that the public and the parents know how that taxpayer money is being used, how much people are being paid, when do you have a meeting, and can we go? Because the public's right to know and the parents' right to know should not be limited to traditional public schools. If the credo that the more a parent is involved in their kids' education, the better they do, what's good for the goose shouldn't be bad for the gander. And so, and then one of the things I worked a lot for about 4 years are for-profit colleges. In one area, 13% of the students in higher education in this country, or post-secondary education in this country, are in for-profit colleges and universities. Almost 40% of the student loans, in some areas 41% of the federally insured and guaranteed student loans go to for-profit colleges. 50% of the default rate on those student loans go to that 13%. And so if we're going to make an investment in education, then I'm one of the people that feel very strongly that there has to be serious accountability as to how that money's used and how those student loans, because once you default, you've essentially not only ruined your educational future, but your financial future as well. And we have been pushing really hard that there has to be accountability, and I'm glad that now that the Justice Department and the Department of Education are becoming much more aggressive about making sure that people are accountable for the millions and millions and millions of dollars in defaulted loans across this nation and the ruined lives that it's left behind. And we couldn't have a discussion without talking a little bit about immigration reform. You know, if we would have passed immigration reform 7 years ago with a path to legalization, we wouldn't be dealing with some of the trauma and some of the violence that we're dealing with in the political front right now. We would have also, in the state of Arizona, been receiving every year $43 million in new tax revenue that never gets collected. And we continue to push for that. But we also understand that the fixation right now is on security. Everybody runs to Nogales, looks at the wall, then they want it higher, wider, deeper, and then they leave Nogales and have a press conference, and at the end of the day, nothing changes. We have a piece of legislation that talks about the economic and the security side. We need $500 million for customs officers, the folks in blue that process, trade, and provide security at the border. We need the modernizations of all our ports of entry, and with the technologically up-to-date that needs to be there. We want to repeal the unconstitutional authority that Homeland Security has to waive any law that they want within 100 miles of the border. We want to consult with stakeholders in the borderlands. We want border communities to be able to be part of an oversight, evaluative process that says this is working, this is not working. We also want to have an aggressive strategy on combating human smuggling. And what we forget till after the fact is to strengthen our cooperation and relationship with Mexico. That's investment. And for Arizona, a good investment. Healthcare, we're concentrating on children's healthcare. Going back and forth with the state administration in terms of the Medicaid waivers. We don't feel that they should be granted. We also feel that CHIP and kids care need to be part of the overall provisions of health. And when we ranked 49th for the 5th year in a row of uninsured kids in this country, that's a shameful statistic. It's a shameful statistic, and something can be done about it. And let's not make don't make these babies the ideological point of the spear, because you don't want to take that money for a political issue, when in reality, it's the kids that you're hurting. This is money dedicated to children that we are not receiving because there's some political statement being made. And these families and these babies don't understand what that statement is, and quite frankly, I don't either. Affordable Care Act needs to be reformed. It needs to be, there's areas that need to be fixed. The ballooning copays and premium increases are driving people not to use insurance that they just got. The drug cost, the capping of that is essential, and the premium changes have to happen as well. I'm one of the first to admit that the Affordable Care Act needs to be reformed. If we're going to incentivize businesses, let's do it in a way that is respectful of what the reality for that business really is. If we are going to penalize businesses, then let's make sure that the penalty is commensurate with the crime. But the fear that I have, and many of us that supported the Affordable Care Act, because it did in my district, 80,000 people that didn't have insurance have it now. What I fear is that once we open up the Pandora's box to do something right, that we're back to that repeal or not repeal. So it's become, because of the politics, progress that needs to be made in this Healthcare Reform Act isn't being made simply because if you open the box, then you're back to the argument, yes or no again. And maybe some people want that argument, but I think that train's already left the station. And if we want that train to run on time, we need to get in and begin to fix some of the stuff that's broken inside. That system is not perfect. Social Security wasn't perfect when it was first put together. And I think we have an opportunity here to both deal with the complaints that we're getting, but more importantly, to start to fix it for the long term. And the economy and jobs, the state of Arizona has the second worst income gap between the rich and the poor in the country. The disparity is that huge. And I mention that because there are there are break-even initiatives that the federal government, along with partnership with the states and locals, can do. Just take just take transportation. We've passed the FAST Act, enough money for 2 years, not sure how you're going to find the other money for the other 3 years. It goes through 2020. Problem is that we don't have a funding mechanism. You know, the gas taxes, through its own inertia, is dying. Through the changing transportation modes and behaviors of the American people, less revenue. So we have to find a revenue stream that does what the gas tax used to do. Help fund transportation, emphasis on public transit, and helps to deal with all those issues. You know, every time we spend $1.3 billion in transportation money, that's 29,000 jobs. And that's from the cottage industries of engineering and the technical professional work toward the men and women that are actually out there building the structure or fixing the structure. And I was very disappointed that the bond election didn't pass. And disappointed in that it was a combination of things, but disappointed in almost a kind of a cavalier attitude on the part of many people that whether they're opposed to it or not, that's a democracy, but those that said, I'm not going to vote for it at all on this thing. I think that was an investment opportunity that could have matched us up everywhere. There's enough fingers to go around to say what went wrong, but the fact of the matter is that was an investment strategy that I think we missed. And we missed it because maybe the package wasn't what it should have been, or maybe the people that stood the most to benefit from those initiatives didn't provide the support that initiative needed. You know, when you have Raytheon, which would have been a big beneficiary of that, 23 million, if I'm not mistaken, and you have some of their employees running for public office, and Raytheon employees rating against why that tax shouldn't be passed. No, the man's got a right to his opinion. I don't have a problem with that. But sometimes industry has to indicate to people in those positions that you're biting the hand. And it was biting the hand that feeds. And I think that those kinds of cavalier dismissals of transportation needs in this community, the additional money that was in public transit I supported, the open space part of it, down the road, hopefully, because things don't become too severe, we'll forget about it. But if they do become and continue to be a point for this community to complain about, that hopefully we'll see it again, restructure a package, and my suggestion to the people responsible is to be as inclusive as you can be in putting together a package that can pass before the voters this next time around. Let me talk a little bit about my favorite stuff that I had fun with, and that's ranking member of the Natural Resources Committee, and I work a lot in keeping the worst from happening. That's my job. Trying to remain and retain the bedrock laws that have made this country the envy of the world in terms of its natural resources and its conservation and preservation of those resources and the species attached to those resources. The public lands of the American people, and they belong to all of us, are not for extraction only. They're for conservation as well. They're for recreation. They're for species protection. And they're for legacy. So a generation like my grandson, when he takes his family 50 years from now, we'll still have a Grand Canyon. There'll still be water in it. The river will still run. And we'll be able to connect ourselves as a nation to that legacy. We're working really hard with the administration and with the piece of legislation for monument protection status to about 1.7 million acres around the Grand Canyon, a buffer that would ensure that the Grand Canyon would be there for generations to come. And we're going to press our dear president that under the Antiquities Act, he has the right and the power to. And hopefully, as you get more information on this, you'll come to the conclusion that, at least on this occasion, I made a wise choice. I already talked about the role of government. That was my last note. And if I've confused you enough, that's good, because the answers will be easier to deal with. With that, Leah, if people want to have any questions for the 15 minutes I have or whatever, I'll be glad to try to answer them. Thank you.
We have time for Q&A. Pass the mic.
No questions. Oh, there's a card. Some people actually use the cards.
Let's see. How can we get more citizens to vote? What can we do?
Oh, I forgot. I was trying to be good, Leah, and not get into my own talking about the elections and all that stuff, trying to be as sanitized as I could. And I think this election is going to take care of that problem real well coming up in 2016. You're seeing both major parties going through a evolutionary period, evolving. I think one party is devolving, but that's another point. But as we, I told you I'm still staying bipartisan. Let's just take my party. You have Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, an insurgent kind of populist, pushing the bar and the envelope as far in terms of talking about no college debt, free tuition in public land-grant colleges, $15 an hour minimum wage, controlling Wall Street, fair taxation, and resonating particularly with the young and with working class folks across this country. And you saw it in Michigan, a state that he was down 20 points. The reason I mention that, because that's a connection point that we have to make. And I think that the way you get people to vote is that on a personal level, it's about pocketbooks, but on a personal level, it's about family too. The instinct of people to vote because they're protecting theirs is a very strong instinct. And I think that instinct is going to be notably seen in the Latino voters this year. Because we thought we were kind of moving away from the violence about immigration. We thought that, we could have a discussion that would be a little more rational and fact-based about what to do about immigration and what to do about security on our border. It's devolved into a discussion about us and them. It's devolved into fear-mongering and scapegoating. And I think the Latino voters in this country, and a lot of voters in this country, they don't need quiet signals to get it. This is against us. And it's against the legacy, my kids' opportunity in the future, and I think that's going to stimulate it. Unfortunately, that shouldn't be the reason that we always go out to vote. And I think that as we go forward, the hardest thing for me has always been we bust ourselves every time we run on getting out the vote, and appreciably we'll gain 2 points, 3 points, 5 points. And it's very frustrating. But at the same time, I think government has a role in ending the cynicism and to get back to where decision making is not based on just raw power, that it's based on facts, a little bit of science would be good, some logic, and the art of compromise is give and take, not just take. And if we can get to that point, I tell people that some of the best things I got done was when I had an opportunity to serve with Jim Coby. We would disagree, we'd go on the road to argue about Social Security, Iraq, whatever the issue was. But it came to projects dealing with expansions of national parks, projects dealing with the University of Arizona, projects dealing with transportation issues in the city and the county. And I think that civility, I think would help people feel like maybe their government is functional again.
Please tell us a little bit more, in your view, of the need to improve the relationship with Mexico.
The discussion about the border and Mexico is always a one-way conversation. We have it among ourselves. And we're dismissive of, and I think we have to be horribly respectful of the sovereignty issue, just as we insist that our sovereignty be respected. And those are two steps. But I think there's also a step that is on the exchange side that I think is important. From commerce to business to education to exchange of information and healthcare. And there was a time when the exchange students from Latin America, and in particular Mexico, were the highest concentrations along major universities in the Southwest and California. Now they're one of the lowest. And I think that people-to-people kind of exchange, we need to revive that and make that part of an agenda again. The other issue is the economic issue. That America's role in the economic development of Mexico has to be a role that is supportive and not tries to assume the control of it. All these are things about respect and using our free trade status that we have with Mexico so that there is a mutual benefit to both sides. And that it's not just about shipping things, it's about creating jobs. And I also think that for elected officials and for communities on both sides of the border, particularly in the borderlands, the tighter those relationships could be on vital issues, the better it kind of resonates all the way down into our respective countries. But we used to, when Boehner was speaker, we used to tell him in Ohio there was 236,000 full-time workers in his state that depended on trade with Mexico. And that just to be dismissive of that was a mistake. And I think that the economic side is important, but the people-to-people interchange, if we could match those up, I think long-term and short-term will have a tremendous benefit. And there's no reason why, particularly in the borderlands where we live, that shouldn't be seamless. And we shouldn't be working out paranoia all the time. That there are students that should be part of our life here, and students we have here that should be part of the life in Mexico. And I think that would help a lot.
Another question? Okay, then I'll ask a political one.
No.
Yay. I think a couple months ago, you came out in support of Bernie Sanders in a highly contested race and wanted to find out a little bit about your thought process in that, what risk you took politically in the Democratic Party to do so, and I guess your reasoning behind that.
No, Mona's sitting next to you. She could tell you about masochism and some other things that follow me around. But I would, I try to comport myself in a very low-key, non-controversial way most of my career. And don't do